Hello, everyone, and welcome back to McLaneCast. This is episode 6. I'm your host, Aaliyah, and this is the podcast brought to you guys straight from the students of the Art Venture Production Academy. Today, I'm joined with 3 very special guests. Did you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Ms. Aleman, and this year I am one of the vice principals over at McLane High School.
So my name is Mrs. Clifton. I am an education specialist here on campus.
I'm Miss Pancotti and the Campus Culture Director.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. Today, we're going to start off this year with the first episode is going to be around mental health. So to start the conversation, why do you guys think mental health is important?
Take it away.
Yeah.
Question.
You know,
Great question.
mental health impacts everything that we do. Mental health it's our perspective, it is the supports that we have around us, it's the way that we're able to handle and resolve and get through difficult times in our lives, or manage difficult tasks. So it affects our well-being, our ability to take care of ourselves and take care of those around us, and it just impacts everything that we do. So it's really key that we take care of our mental health.
I agree. Did you guys?
Definitely. Well, and one thing that you mentioned, Ms. Aleman, that really just resonated with me as you were speaking is our own mental health and how that impacts others around us. So in a school setting, that's where, anywhere really, school, at home, with our friends, when we're going out, it's something that is just so fluid and it changes all the time. And yeah, so just super key to be aware of that, but then also when you're not aware of that, like have other people around you that you care about, like help you identify those things. So,
Yeah, I would say that understanding what mental health even is, and that there's like not, oh, I have a mental health problem, or like even saying things like problem, like, no, you're dealing with something, this is how you were born, or trauma has made you react this way, or whatever it is. I think it's just really important to know that it is a very broad spectrum. It doesn't look one way and then everyone looks that certain way when you have different mental health and under an umbrella like that, it's just not specific. And to understand it all is very difficult, but to just have compassion too, to know that like your battle is different than somebody else's, but you're both battling something. And yeah, it's a big thing to understand, but it's also very important.
I think, yeah, as teachers, it's very important for you guys. But you guys work with, I don't know how many students a day, but a lot of students a day. And
so many.
I'm sure you guys have seen firsthand some of the problems that students come to you with regarding mental health. What are some of the causes that you've seen among students to have this negative mental state at school or even at home?
So, Leah, one thing that struck me when you said that is like, yes, we see several different hundreds of students a day, but our students also see several different hundreds students and adults a day as well. And they're coming from home where not one person is perfect, right? We don't have that perfect environment. We don't have the perfect setup. And just like when someone's not feeling well physically, we see those signs and symptoms, right? Not feeling well today, taking care of your mental health and feeling mentally well is equally as important. And one of those things, I know when we had talked previously, we had like a conversation before this, a time when we were talking about like when someone is not taken care of, when their mental health has been affected, their behaviors can be really misunderstood. So, you catch somebody on a bad day, and typically the majority of the time we're interacting well, everything is going cool, and then catch me on a bad day, and it all goes bad. Bad days turn into bad weeks turn into bad months. We have those patterns if we're not taking care and paying attention. So I think a lot of times those interactions, like the interactions from when they get here, if they're having a bad day, that's going to affect their outlook.
Yeah.
And so one thing I know Miss Russell, one of our school psychologists, kind of shared with me that she had shared with a student was like, no, you had a bad moment. You're not having a bad day. You had a bad moment and you got through that moment, right? So anyway, sorry, I forgot the question.
don't worry.
Because I do that. Sorry.
I
I
do
think-
that too.
I think that's a really good way to think of it, just like it being a bad moment and being able to move past it. I'll go back to the question in a second, but also I kind of wanted to touch on you mentioning behavioral problems, because I feel like that's something that is really overlooked, because students have like mental health struggles. It's a common thing. However, I feel like the behavioral problems are kind of overlooked a little bit. That's kind of just my opinion. So if you guys want to go off of that, you can. But I do appreciate you like bringing that up, because behavioral problems come in a lot of different forms, and I think most of the time people don't want to look at behavioral problems as something that's, I guess, can be deeper than just someone wanting to act out.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Ms. Pancotti, you mentioned earlier, like, just the labeling of it as a problem. I mean, in and of itself has its own different, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like, connotations to it, or like just things that it brings to the table. When I feel like whenever I approach, you know, a situation or a student, I just think of it in terms of like behavior. So what is the behavior that we're seeing right now, and what is the cause? What is the root of that behavior? So when you mentioned like behavior problems that we're seeing in students, for me as a teacher in the classroom from day to day, I just do my best to approach the student on a human level first. Like, okay, well, I know that there's a reason why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. Like, let me try to be a person in your life that's, you know, you can come to and like coach me through, okay, well, you know, let's coach each other. Like, why are you feeling right now what you're feeling, and how is that, you know, affecting you immediately in the situation? That's really what I think about when you mention behavior problems. That's what I...
Yeah. One thing that it kind of reminds me of, there was like some quote, they probably do it in every credential program, but it's where you talk about a student, talks about a student, and it's like, okay, the student came late to class, and instead of the teacher saying, I'm so happy you're here, they're saying, why are you late? You're always late. Like, you know, it's a first negative interaction when you have no idea what that student just came from. And yeah, let's get down to the reason why you're late, but let me first invite you to my classroom and just tell you how happy I am that you're my student and that you made it today. Like, there's a lot of information that cannot be assumed, I think, especially as teachers. And one thing that when I started teaching, I wanted to make sure in my classroom that I was trying to greet my kids every day, but I was also telling them, like, hey, I missed you yesterday. I noticed you weren't here. And that might turn somebody's day from like they're on the brink of having a terrible day. Just one negative interaction is just going to send them into a spiral. Like, one positive interaction can do the same thing, but spiral upwards. Like, oh, okay, good. I'm glad somebody noticed that I wasn't here yesterday. I'm glad somebody knew I was late. I'm glad somebody's happy I'm here, you know? So I think that also plays into it. And sometimes as teachers, does get really hard because we interact with a lot of kids. When I had a full schedule, I had like 200 kids that I was responsible for every single day. And that's a lot. But like Ms. Aleman said, you guys are in contact with a lot of kids too. So, you know, as teachers, we forget. You are all living your separate day as we are living our adult separate day, but we have to reach each other on a human level. Like, And I would be honest with my kids who are like, hey, I am not having a good day today. I'm like, this happened, and I'm just like really on edge right now, or I'm anxious, or I would try to label my emotions of what I was feeling.
And that's really important. When we're able to label our emotions, it's like, there's a researcher by the name of Dan Siegel. He has coined the term like, you have to name it to tame it. So if a lot of times the students they'll talk and they'll say, I was feeling some type of way, right? And that's a great way to just capture a big emotion, whether that be jealousy, loneliness, left out, anxious. I was just feeling some type of way, and a lot of times that's my initial interactions with students. A lot of times, one of the things that you had asked, like what types of behaviors. A lot of it stems from a lot of anxiety and struggling to cope with different issues that are happening throughout the day or in their life, or just coping with anxiety itself. So when we can help to label that emotion of what is being felt, we actually help to make the connection between the brain, the body, the sensation, and then we can make meaning of what it is that we're experiencing, so that we can move past it and start to like incorporate that.
I have right here written down, this is from the CDC, by the way. Like, I got my information from the CDC. Students ages 3 to 17 from, I think that's supposed to say 2017, but from 2017 to 2019, 9.4% of students within those ages experienced anxiety. And roughly that's 5.8 million people, which honestly seems like a low number considering how much like I personally see around me. It feels like problems like anxiety and even depression, which was 4.4%, I feel like those problems are so prevalent that those numbers seem a little low. But what are some of the causes, kind of going back to the question, what are some of the causes that you've seen from these types of mental health? I'm watching my words too now after you said it's not a problem, because you're right, it's not a problem. So mental health
Needs. Yeah, for sure. So I think when we talk about causes, it's really hard to, that's so broad, right? Because depending on the level of severity, like mental health itself is on a spectrum, right? To where you're just not feeling it, you're a little off, to where mental illness runs in your family, and we talk about having a higher level need, right? So, but definitely there are environmental factors that impact our mental health, like how we were raised, what type of environment that surrounds us. A lot of our students that come to our high school, or just Fresno in general, experience a lot of environmental trauma. There is gunshots, there's getting to school in an unsafe neighborhood, there's we call that environmental trauma. There's stuff that we see in society that's happening that impacts how we view if the world is safe or not. And then for some people that feel like some people that had the experience of feeling like they were raised in a home where they can depend on and their needs are being met, they have more protective factors to keep them mentally well. They have a security, a place to go to. If I was moving from place to place, I didn't know really where my next meal was going to come from. I wasn't sure if we were going to have enough money to make ends meet. I'm more susceptible to struggle with feeling mentally well, because that's a lot of added stress, added factors that's gonna impact my ability to function. There's more anxiety about just getting through the day, right? So part of it, a huge part, is environmental. Another part is biology, like if depending on the DNA, right, what runs genetically in my family. It's kind of like if somebody has diabetes, They can eat well and be thin and exercise and do all the things right, but if they're pre-genetically disposed to be diabetic, they can still actually have diabetes. So a huge part is that biological factor as well. But there are also protective factors. So not only like what causes, and I know you're probably going to get there, but I think also coming into the school setting, so much now we're seeing such a high need following living with the pandemic, right? We have we all experienced a trauma. None of us went through that pandemic in our lifetime. And even just walking around and seeing people with masks, and it was scary, and people were dying, and there was just so much that we experienced too. Then we come back in person and have to navigate that, and it's a lot to try and manage. So a lot of several causes. Also, like struggling and learning. Like a lot of students are like afraid. They feel like I don't want to be disrespected. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be called out. That I don't know. I'm getting it. I know they're going down the row and they're calling on the next person to answer. I know I'm probably going to be next. That anxiety, rather than answer, I might have to dip from this class. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I know I felt that. Maybe not so much recently, but I don't know if I should be talking about myself, but I know, like in middle school, for example, it was 8th grade, Spanish 2, and we had to do this project on our family tree. And I might have told this story before, but I had to do a project on my family tree and then present it in Spanish. And I literally made myself sick before going up to present. And it was, I genuinely thought like I had the flu or something because my body felt really warm. I felt like I was throwing up. I didn't realize at the time that it was anxiety, but I used to have like such bad anxiety that it would make me feel like physically sick. And I still feel that sometimes, not so much like with academics and things like that, but I still feel that anxiety. And I definitely think that like correlates with school, but I love school, so I don't want to. I don't want to paint that as the only factor.
For sure.
What are some of the factors that you guys have seen with students when it comes to like any negative mental health?
Ooh, there are so many. So just any factors that we've seen in students that contribute to that. Most recently, just this school year, would have to be really just not really knowing how to label what it is that they're feeling. So just like what you mentioned, you know, how you were feeling anxious and you made yourself sick. Like students not really like recognizing, okay, this isn't like a normal thing that I'm going through, or that there are other ways to cope with what it is that they're feeling in that moment, if that makes sense. I feel like I've seen that more. I guess that's just something I've seen more recently within the last like 2 days. And so just kind of helping students, helping just people like each other, like understand that what it is that they're feeling has root causes like environmental factors, right? Or, you know, it's being caused by an interaction that you had just last period, right? And what you're feeling now is trickling into this next period, which, you know, not all of us see that.
Yeah.
You know, as teachers, as adults, like, you know, we're just kind of in the moment, like thinking, okay, well, here's the next assignment, here's the next thing that you have to do, or you know, you're not doing this, wait a second, I'm not, you know, we're not always stopping to think, okay, well, hold on, there's a little change here. Subtle changes can lead to, you know, bigger things. So
For sure.
thinking
Yeah.
about that.
I think for me, so far in my teaching career, I would say environmental factors is a really, really big one. I think that it's the anxiousness around the insecurities of where they come from and what home life looks like. And some of them, like, hoping nobody ever sees it. Like, school is their best part of their day. And it's the anxiety of them having to go home after school. Like, that that is a lot of what I saw. I had a, not to toot my own horn, but I had a pretty good classroom culture at the previous school I was at, and it was to a point where it was kids not going to any of their other classes and only coming to my class. Again, I'm not going to be like, you need to go to class. I will say that, but I would be like, I'm so glad you're here. Why aren't you going to any of your other classes? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I don't get along with blah, 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 blah. And the teacher always says this. And so I think, too, there's maybe not always a listening ear for them to even have the ability to label their feelings, because nobody's there to talk to them and sit down and be like, what's going on? How are you feeling today? Why did you act out today in class? You're normally so good. Like those conversations, those normally don't happen. So it's there's just not a lot of opportunity, I think, outside of the classroom, or maybe in the classroom too, but of kids being able to talk about their feelings. So that, I think that's like part of environmental factors. Yeah.
I think, yeah, students, I think, I don't know who said it, but the fact that like one small thing can turn into or snowball into an even bigger thing. I think that's important to recognize, because yeah, it could be like a small problem in the moment, but without that help and, you know, solving it right then and there, it could definitely lead to a lot bigger actual problems. I have here some like statistics of that, and I won't go through all of them, but like ages 12 to 17, so like older kids, I guess, not so much the younger ones, when before it was like 3 years old. 12 to 17, 15% of students, or I don't want to say students because they might not be in school, but 15% of kids had experienced major depressive episodes. 36% had persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, and then that leads to 4% substance abuse, 3.2 illicit drug usage. It's just, you can see, like, it leads to a lot bigger problems. So my next question is, should students prioritize their mental health, even if that means prioritizing it over academics? Like how you said, students would come into your classroom and not go to their other classrooms. Is that necessarily a bad thing? If there's definitely bad sides to it, and I can recognize that, but where do you draw the line when it comes to prioritizing your mental health over academics?
Right.
That's a really good question. Does anybody want to start? I know I did a lot of talking. So
Okay.
equity of voice here.
So, mental health first. So, how they are feeling comes first before academics. Like, as they walk into the door, if that student is, like you mentioned, feeling some type of way, and they're not available for the instruction, that piece has to come first. So, you know, they come in, put their head down, that's out of the norm for them, or you can just tell in subtle using body language, right? Like cues, facial expressions, things like that. If they are not ready to take in that information, then that should be addressed first.
Right.
I know that's not always, you know, how you do that in the classroom, so many different ways. I love that you mentioned, like, as soon as you get a student who's coming in, even though they're not in your class period, because I've had that happen too. Yeah. It's like, I love you, like, how are you doing? It's great to see you, but where should you be right now? So just kind of, you know, making sure that they feel where they need to be in order to then be available for anything else. Because sometimes, you know, you do need to put a halt on, okay, you know, if you have a student in crisis, or if you have a student who, you know, maybe just, it could be as simple as not having gotten something to eat that morning that is affecting their overall just mood and just energy levels and stuff like that. So just kind of finding different ways in the classroom to address those things, whether it's, here's a snack, Cool, awesome.
Yeah.
Let me just crack a joke, even though I know, you may not be feeling it in that moment. But absolutely, I feel like that piece has to be addressed first before anything else. And there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
but that doesn't always happen,
Yeah.
you know.
One thing I was going to talk about was I think when I was in school, kids didn't talk about mental health or like, oh, I feel anxious. Like we were just scared or, nervous or sad. It was very simple terms to describe our emotions, or we just didn't talk about them at all, which I think culturally too happens a lot. But as far as being a teacher, receiving a student who is not having their best day, and as a teacher, you want them to. And they're coming to you, and like Miss Clifton said, you have to address that issue first. Well, I think that there's a lot of generations that are still on campus that maybe don't believe that these things affect you as students. Like if you're feeling anxious because of an interaction you had in a previous period, whatever it is, and you're coming into their class, you can't learn. Oh, well, maybe one teacher might say, oh, you need to just do my work. And then another teacher might say, give yourself a few minutes, and then you bring yourself back and be able to do the worksheet I gave you. And another teacher might say, let me sit down and talk with you for a few minutes, and I'll get the class going. There's a lot of different, a wide range of just like how people perceive mental health and how open they are to talking about it, but also being vulnerable, which is a lot different from how I was taught. When I was in high school, I had a teacher that she was very open and honest with us. Maybe sometimes too open and honest, but she's like still like one of my friends now. We're colleagues now. And so it was cool for her to be so honest with us, because it almost gave us like a glimpse into what adulthood looked like. So it helped ease anxieties, I feel like, because it was more of like okay, well, if she's here doing this and she did that last night, or whatever it was, like it was like, all right, I can make it through fifth period today. But I think it's just like a big generational thing where to some people it's like it's Santa Claus and it doesn't exist, and that's not how it is. And personally, when I started going to therapy, I was 18, and the first thing that my dad said to me was, well, what's wrong with you? I'm like, nothing's wrong with me. Like, I just have things to talk about. Like, there's a lot going on. And so one person might deal with it one way. Like I said, generationally, they might do it different. And then the next person might do it a different way. And I can even tell, like, from millennial to Gen Z, like, you guys are so open and honest with how you feel. And it's not every single person, but it is definitely, I think, an easier egg to crack. Like, you're a little more willing to open up to the right people. Whereas I would say, like, I wouldn't. If you ask me how I'm doing, I'm going to say good, no matter what. Like, I don't want to tell you what's going on up here. So, yeah, I think it's just really, really different and hard to say everyone should be able to welcome their students and know that they're not having a good day, and then kind of go from there. But not every teacher will do that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And as a student, I really appreciate those teachers and staff members that I can have like an open and honest conversation with. It makes it so much easier to be here and kind of look forward to those classes, even if it is a stressful class. Feeling comfortable with your teacher can like make all the difference.
So I know one of the things that we've shared with educators, and one thing that we've learned together is there's a saying in that is connection before content, right? So before students can be ready to learn, before we can get into that state of mind where we're ready to learn, we have to have a bit of connection first. I see you. I'm glad you're here. Hey, what's going on? Like, oh, how was your guys' weekend, right? A little bit of an opportunity to connect. And then after it's all out, we're seen, we feel validated, we're heard. All right, cool. What do we got to do?
Right.
Right now, let's get to work.
Yeah.
in terms of what should be prioritized around because that was the question, right? Okay, I'm learning. So a lot of times that connection before content will do the trick.
Yeah.
It's just enough to keep the balance, right? Now, when it becomes something that is more, then it's like, okay, now the balance, we have to look at this. Now, if I'm the educator in the classroom, I have to say, well, I still have a job. I still have all these students that I have to get through my job. Mm-hmm. And if I don't get through this content, it's causing me anxiety as an adult, right? I'm going to have another stressor. I'm going to have these other things. So in order to help this student get their needs met, you know what? I'm going to need you to go, before I became a vice principal, they would say, I need you to go see Miss Aleman. Right? I need you to go see Miss Jessica. I need you to go check in with someone.
Yeah.
So I brought a couple of things actually that I get to use with my students, because sometimes all it would take is then they would come talk to me, and we would, or Miss Jessica or Miss Russell, we can go over the supports later, but an opportunity to do a little bit of grounding. Let me hear you in a private setting. We can take a minute to really do some a mindfulness exercising where we're doing some breathing activities, some breath work to help get through that rough moment. Talk a little bit more about the plan for supporting deeper needs, mental health needs, before we can now now we did our time, and that was prioritized over academics in that moment. But ultimately, the reason doing that is I'm going to keep you well for the time that you're here. But ultimately, my job is to keep you well enough to get you back in that class.
Right.
So you can be ready to learn, because I need you to graduate.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? All right.
I think too, I forgot what the question was, so I went on the tangent, but,
I do that all the time in Pancati. That's why I was like, you guys go first. I'm gonna learn.
but one thing that, yes, I would have kids come in and they're not in my class, or they were in my class and didn't go to any other class, and I would just say, okay, what is it going to take to get you to go to that class? Maybe not today, and let's talk about tomorrow. Let's talk about Friday. Can we work on getting you to that class? And I would say, if you go to that class, you can come in. I have like a popsicle for you or something. Like, I just want to see you do something that you're going to push yourself a little bit, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but you need to go to your other classes, even though it's something that you don't want to do. So I wouldn't like immediately push them out. Yeah, academically, that's not good. Academically, as a teacher, I shouldn't be keeping them. But mentally, they needed a space outside of where they were supposed to be at. And if they want to be in my crazy classroom, go ahead, chill out for an hour, and then go. Chill out for 20 minutes and then go. So I think it's like, yeah, having
Balance.
that, yeah, balance.
The other part is, as you were talking about the statistics, what we know is youth makes up the largest population for suicide, right? Suicide youth. So September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and maybe that might be a part 2, just saying. However, so part of that is like, I need you here. How about that? So I'm going to prioritize that first. I need you here. And so we need to take care of, prioritize your mental health. You matter. You're important. You're not alone. We're here for you. Because sometimes it goes so unnoticed, we don't see what's underneath what our students are really dealing with. So I think the fact that there's been a priority to support students and take that seriously, and there's a whole, educational promotion around that. That's really what we got to do too.
I have a couple statistics here for suicide. 12 to 17-year-olds, 18% seriously considered attempting suicide, and 2.5 have made an attempt that required medical treatment. And even though like 2.5% seems like such a low number, that's in comparison to how many kids were included in this survey. I think like 2.5 is a huge number, because that's almost in the millions, if not in the millions. So I do think that balance is important, but if it takes like, one day out of a school day to help someone, I think that should be prioritized as well. But I do understand it goes unnoticed all the time. So this is kind of a question I was supposed to ask later, but what do you guys think students can provide to you guys, staff members, people they're friends with, family? How can students take that first step to do better, or what would you like to see from students to improve the resources, I guess, regarding getting better?
I would have to agree with Ms. Pancotti. Like this generation, the youth in this generation, social media take it like the good and the bad, right? One of the beautiful benefits is that there's so much information, TikTok on mental health and mental well-being. Like I've had students come in, Instagram stories and different things, right? I've had students come in and they're having a conversation with me. Now, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so my background in mental health is extensive, and to have students come in and have a conversation with me, I'm thinking, wow, you know more now at your age than most adults that I've had conversations with, right? In the past probably 10 years. As I think about that, I'm like, oh wow, they're very, your generation has access. And I don't know if it was part of the pandemic where there was so much reaching out around resources. There was so much out there that now I think our students are beginning to access it on their own, or like support one another with that. That has been tremendous. It's different. It takes it, but I do appreciate that's a resource that you guys come with.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so true.
Better help. Like there's so many other resources that students have said that that's what they've tried to access. So that helps me to know which is an avenue that I can best support and reach to access youth. If I need to get something out there, you guys are going to tell me if I ask. And we have a good relationship, right?
The question was, what was the question? Oh,
Can you
what
guys?
can, what can students do to help you guys give us the resources that we need, I guess?
Yeah, I think like what Miss Aleman said, you have already found so many things, maybe that you don't even realize. We were talking about ASMR before this. Like that is a very, that's like a very calming tool to a lot of people. And maybe kids don't realize that, but there's things that I think students are already doing that I think, teachers haven't really gone on to yet. But your generation is just so outspoken. So it's a lot easier to know like exactly what you need. And sometimes if we don't know what you need right away, you're able to be like, okay, give me a minute. And then you're able to think for yourself and be able to advocate for yourself, and say exactly what you need. Or
and maybe that's
in
what
the
it
realm of
is
it.
like the feedback,
Yeah.
right? Is like, what is helpful for me is the fact that the students can give me feedback. Ms. Aleman, you told me this and this, but that was not it, right? And then I'm like, oh, okay. So it allows.
Yes. Yeah.
It allows for that adjustment.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you know how y'all are sometimes.
Yeah. I know sometimes like, dang, okay, we don't need to be that honest.
Exactly. I'm just thinking from a lens of like those students who aren't as outspoken, who, it's just not in their personality, or there's just different like cultural factors, or just different factors in general, that are keeping them from just sharing that with us. And so, as educators, as just adults in the lives of our students, all the teacher prep programs that we go through and like just, you know, research that we do on our own, like we know that, you know, not everyone is as outspoken to do that. So when we do see students who, you know, we're noticing those subtle patterns of changes in their behavior or in just their, you know, progress in the classroom, then what I would ask of students is just to be open. If they don't, you know, if they're not comfortable with saying it out loud or sharing it with me in that moment, then let me help you maybe connect you with an adult on campus that you are comfortable with.
Right. Yeah.
So that way you can get into that space of being able to express yourself wherever you do feel comfortable.
And I would say definitely that one thing that students can do to help us is when they bring us other students. Because that has been like
Absolutely.
so key for me. Like once, you know, I've established a relationship and, you know, we have trust and it feels helpful, then there is a self-referral and then there's a referral, like peer referral. And they'll bring Miss Aleman, you need to talk to her, right? And they'll usher, and then that is the gateway so that we
Yeah.
get to know.
That's so true.
I haven't even thought about that as like a way to help. I kind of talked about it during my interview with Gavin Newsom, but I wasn't even trying to bring it up. But yeah, I had situation before. If you want to know the entire situation, you should go watch it on YouTube. But I had a situation before.
Yeah, find me on
It was-
YouTube.
Subscribe.
Okay, situation before elementary school, I had friends who went out of their way to talk to my teacher about some problems I was going through, and I said that it at the time it sucks feeling outed like that,
Right.
when you don't feel ready, but at the same time I think once it gets to a certain point it doesn't really matter if you're ready or not to talk about it. You kind of
Right.
need to talk about those
Yeah.
things.
Absolutely.
And so the next question I have for you guys was, what resources do students have that they can utilize here at school or off campus to find that help?
So on campus, I'm so proud to be a part of McLane. Like I really am. We are killing it, to be honest. So we have a
That's why Gavin Newsom came here in the first place.
just saying. I'm sorry. We have a clinical school social worker, Miss Jessica. We have, and she provides social emotional support, individual and group counseling. We have a clinical school social worker, Andres Rodriguez. He's from Project Access, and that program specifically helps homeless youth, foster youth, youths in transition. We have Mr. Richard Navarro. He is our new restorative practices school counselor. So he does group counseling, but he also works to resolve conflict whenever there's issues of harm, hurt, attention, which creates a whole other host of anxiety and depression and feeling lack of connection. And leads to other problems like avoidance. We have Miss Vanessa Cabrera. She is another therapist on site through Family Foundation. It's a third-party agency. She's accessible to us through a referral from Miss Jessica. We have 2 school social workers, full-time school social workers, Mrs. Karen Russell and Mrs. Michelle Delatorre. So they are also available. And so we have a crisis person every single day of the week, which is amazing,
Yes.
really amazing. And, you know, I consider myself a resource still. People still come to my office,
Yes,
and
you are.
I get to head that team. And so in addition to connecting, we can send out referrals out to the community. We have our re-engagement center teacher, Coach Burnett. He's an AC 203. And he also provides individual support, one-on-one, like case management services. You can go and talk to him if you're having, you know, sometimes students say, well, I want to talk to somebody, but I don't want to do like counseling, right? I don't want to be doing therapy or whatever. Well, okay, that's all right. We'll meet you where you're at. We have Coach Savoy, definitely a person that people can relate to, and students normally know him as like, oh my gosh, I got to go see somebody because I got sent out of class, or, I don't want to do lunch detention. But what folks don't know is like he's really one that you can connect to on campus. We have a great librarian and our library tech, Miss Tan and Miss McGarvin. I want to give them a shout out too, because they provide a safe space on campus in the library and an open listening ear. And what y'all don't know is they also provide referrals behind the scenes to us. They'll let me know, like if there's somebody that we need to follow up and check in with. So I hope I didn't miss anyone. If I did, it was purely unintentional. But yeah, we have a huge support system on campus.
Our support system's amazing. I've talked about it before with you, but I think one of the main problems that students have when it comes to having those resources, I think we've touched on this before, is them not knowing how to reach out to all those resources. So do you have any advice or information to give to students on how to do that?
I do, actually. Mr. Clifton just actually helped by making sure, like, he took pictures of all of our support team. And I know. And I just got through, actually, Mrs. Carrillo just helped me get through creating a poster that's going to have all of our folks, all those people I mentioned, they're going to be on a poster with the QR code. And those posters are going to be throughout campus, in addition to every teacher's going to have one so that they can post in their classroom. So at any time, if a student can refer themselves, which they're very good at doing, but also a teacher, if they notice something that's happening in the classroom, it's with easy as taking out their camera and doing that QR code to get that referral going.
That's amazing. I didn't even know about that, and I think that could be so much help, especially like not having to go face to face to start with,
Right.
like having to seek out in the office themselves, looking for those resources. So thank you so much for doing that.
You guys are you'll see it around campus actually this week.
Can't wait.
Yes.
I'm so excited for that.
Did you guys want to add on to anything?
No, well, just the ease, that poster, gold. Like, it really is as simple as just pointing your camera and then filling out, the Google form. I'm thinking from a teacher's perspective. Like, just being able to do that in the moment, and just, like you mentioned, meeting students where they're at, right? And if it's something that, maybe I can't address like right in the moment, I can at least know that someone will follow through and check in with that student.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. That peer-to-peer referral is really struck with me too, because I know that you had mentioned that, during your interview and stuff, and that's fantastic. Just the ease, right? Making it as easy for everyone to be able to access that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think now there isn't as much of a stigma, and there's not that like kind of judgment that you get anymore from being vulnerable and just saying, man, I need help. But I think it is really important to still say that and tell students, the battle that you're dealing with is not minor. Like, it's just because it's your problem, not anybody else's, doesn't mean that everyone needs to take a chill pill and it's only you that's building it up. Like, kids need to take that moment of self-care and just say, okay, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to, deal with this myself, or maybe I am, but I should probably go talk to somebody else just to run it by someone. I know Miss Aleman is a really good person to do that. Like, you are conflict resolution queen, but mental health queen, but you are also somebody I know, like, really, really comfortable with students. That is just a safe place for kids to just ramble off about what's going on, and sometimes that's all kids needs, but I don't think all kids know that. Like, sometimes you need to just sit down and talk about what's going on, get it off your chest, and then you take a deep breath and you're like, wow, I feel so much better. So just knowing there's nothing bad with having a bad day, but also being able to label your feelings and saying, okay, I don't want to say this in front of my friends, but I'm feeling really anxious right now. Like,
Right.
if you're going to not talk to your friends about it, then go find an adult on campus to talk about it with. It's going to be okay. And adults love to talk to you.
I think, yeah, that's important too, because talking to an adult feels so much more different than talking to another student, someone your age. And I think having a trusted adult is really important for all students. But I know that's not exactly like easy for all students. We kind of touched bases on students who are a little bit more shy, who can't talk about their problems like that.
Right.
So do you guys have any advice, or do you know any ways students can find that motivation and courage to speak up or find resources?
It's hard.
Yeah, it's not like...
Well, I want to touch on what Ms. Aleman mentioned, is that connection, right? Just finding what it is and taking the time really to find what it is with that particular student or with that particular person. Like, you know, and building that just strong relational piece first.
Yeah.
To then, you know, follow and, you know, be able to break into what they really need.
Yeah.
Because that trust, that respect, that's huge. Like, that's something, and I'm just thinking of my classroom right now. Like, we have a respect agreement. Like, you know, all of those different key factors that need to just be in place. Like, and showing that you're human. Like, I'm feeling, and I'm okay with, as an adult, like labeling how I feel in the moment.
Yeah.
And modeling that for them can be very powerful.
Yes. Yeah.
Very powerful. So
I agree.
I think in helping students to find that motivation to take that step, it's hard. The only thing I can think of is like just meeting them where they're at and just keep being there until they're
Yes.
ready.
absolutely.
Like, let me give you an example that happened just today. So one thing, like, you know, I'm new as a vice principal, and I'm learning, but I miss that one-on-one time with my students. And I know that my students miss me too. Because they keep, Miss Aleman, you're never there. And I miss it. I truly miss it. So today I had actually a couple of students that came in, but one of them just right before this our podcast time, and it was like, Miss Aleman, you know, you came into my class, and, you know, I gave the student a hug and, you know, checked in with their summer and just did a little connection, right? And right before the student left my room, the student said, you know, I think I'm ready to talk to someone that was for some social emotional. And I was like, okay, say less tomorrow. Like, I'll call you to class, we'll do the referral, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I met with them throughout the year, but it's like they didn't realize how much that connection time, how much it felt like all they were doing was hanging out. But we weren't. We were working through some stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm not there, there's that connection, and it's like to say, like, yeah, I actually think I need that. So it's just being there and waiting till they're ready.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think as a teacher too, it gets a little hard because you only have them for so many minutes.
Yeah.
And it feels hard as a teacher to be like, oh, I know they're not having a bad day. I just had no time for them today. Like, how am I going to get back to them? I have another set of 35 kids coming into my room. But I think with teaching, it might not happen as quickly as being able to call them into your office and talk to them. And it's more of like I would notice it, the kid that never said anything to you, never made eye contact with you, and then all of a sudden they start coming in, they have a smile on their face. Maybe they still aren't making eye contact with you, but at least you know they're a little happy to be there. But it's like that slow progress, and I know with like teachers, and I still feel like I have to learn this too, is like knowing the boundary of a student and meeting them where they're at, and then as their boundary or as their wall starts to come down a little bit more, they kind of let you in more, then you kind of take your opportunities as you see them.
Right.
It can't be all at once, because if I were to go up to a kid that was very quiet in my class, hated talking to me, hated talking out loud, like didn't want to talk to anybody, and then I'm just like, do you want to go see Miss Aleman? Like, I think that would not be,
Right.
that would not go great. So I think it's just having the patience to know that for students, that there are teachers watching, and there are teachers noticing that you know, you're a little more reserved, you're quiet, you're not quick to talk about your feelings, but that they're noticing when you're also becoming more willing to talk about them too. And it might just be with that teacher, but then at least the teacher can refer after that, get that trust going first. Yeah,
See,
exactly.
in a positive way.
Yes, exactly.
So the last question I have for you guys is kind of, I'm gonna put two into one. This first part's a little bit more for Miss Aleman because I feel like you know more about it, but kind of went over the posters that you started for the referrals. Are there any more plans for the future regarding giving resources to students around mental health? And are there any resources that you guys think schools should implement or need for students that we don't already have?
So with the first part, yes, definitely more plans. And I have to give a shout out to our principal, Mr. Wolf. He really prioritizes and sees the need, and he supports it. So with that, he's allowed, like, allocated a budget for social emotional team, which a lot of schools do not have. And so with that allows for us to you know, purchase things that would support the social emotional team to better support our students, to have access to different things. Another part is that we're going to be doing the social emotional team throughout the year wants to have some family and parent engagement opportunities. So the things that we have throughout the year, like I talked about Suicide Awareness Prevention Month, and we're going to have, like, there's a Mental Health Awareness Month and Foster Care Awareness, and all of these things surrounding and supporting needs, social emotional needs of students. Along that, there's a family and a parent engagement component. So reaching out and making sure, like, we're going into the community, not only keeping it at schools. And then we're doing more efforts, like, regionally. So the parent classes are not just going to be for McLaine, but it's going to be for those that belong to our region. So Scan, Yosemite, right? Inviting elementary students that belong to our McLaine region. So because it's not just the high school students, it's the siblings. So getting through and reaching through that. So definitely more plans, and to build off of what we have. Like I said, we have an outside contracted therapist with us. And we still continue to do more community outreach to see how we can bridge that. So definitely more plans in the future.
And the social emotional team will be working with campus culture leadership to make sure that we are spreading the word, helping spread the word around campus about what these different months mean, bringing awareness to them.
Was there any resources that you guys think needs to be added on to the already existing ones?
I would say the one that is really I'm at a loss for right now is thinking is how do we support our students with substance use issues? So many of our students are self-medicating for different things. Again, on a spectrum from like I felt pressure to try it and I wanted to fit in or I didn't know how to say no, to the spectrum of like, no, this has become a dependency.
Right.
Or you were using it to manage anxiety, or you're using to manage it, you know, getting over a breakup, or you're using it to, like, they're coping.
Yes.
But it's, we call that maladaptive. It's not helpful. It causes other problems. But we had this conversation today in thinking about how we can better support our students. You know, as the administrators, we don't want to get kids caught up. Nobody wants to have them out of school. We want them in.
Right.
But we also have to have a safe campus, right? It's not okay to be self-medicating, having the illegal substances. So what can we do to support? So that's one thing that is missing right now, is figuring that out. And I'm not sure yet. There's some community resources, but I'm not sure yet what we need to do as a school site. We need youth just to help us with that.
I think that's really important to recognize. Even though you said that all the pieces aren't in place yet, it's really important to at least start the conversation and recognize that it's a problem that we need to fix in the future. Did you guys have any?
I think it's so crazy to me that when I was in high school, which wasn't that long ago, but when I was in high school, we had one school psychologist, and they weren't there full time. They would go to different campuses around the district and go support. So we might have one for one day. I went to Sunnyside, so there was like over 3,000 students, and so there was no way that all the students that needed help were able to get it. So it's cool now to see we have such a big support staff at McLane, and it's not like that everywhere. It is even within Fresno Unified. So it is like a big yeah, McLane, go Highlanders. But it is a big prideful thing to be a Highlander because we have so many supports. But I think with 2,000 students and having as big of a support team that we have, there was, I think, majority of the kids on campus have mental health needs. And I think for the self-care of our team, I think having another person, just keep bringing as many people in as you can, to help alleviate and make sure that that their cups are full so they can continue to help other students. And so I think just keep bringing therapists, psychologists, school social workers, people in that realm that are going to just be there and available.
District-wide.
For sure.
Keep bringing it, our campus, so thankful, so thankful for all the resources we have, but just like what you mentioned, Ms. Pancati, just keep them coming.
Yeah,
And
for
just
sure.
how can we expand that to all of our Fresno Unified, which I know it's happening, but, just keep going with that.
Yeah, according to Gavin Newsom, when he was here, he said that
Yes, he did.
we're getting a lot of monies to help with this.
Oh, yeah.
I'll call him after this and ask him. You can add the information after in the description or something. Okay, I think it's about time to wrap things up. So real quick, did you guys have any last thoughts you wanted to get out there regarding the topic or anything else?
I actually really wanted to just give a shout out to Art Venture Academy. No, I'm serious. To be able to spotlight, they've always put a spotlight on what was important to our youth and looking at, voice for the voiceless, and that's always been a thing. But to focus on say mental health, I was ecstatic about that. So I'm just so ecstatic about that. So thank you so much. Shout out to you. Thank you
Thank you guys.
for everything,
Absolutely.
for having us.
Man, this has been a really cool experience. This is my first time in the studio.
Did amazing.
And just my parting words would have to be just to whoever is viewing, student or adult, just keep leaning in. Keep leaning into the process. Whatever and however that process it looks like for you in that moment, go with it. We'll keep leaning in with you.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing.
Great minds think alike.
But I think it's really important, again, for any kid listening, for any friend listening that knows that their friend's going through something. I think it's just really important to know what your resources are, but also to just tell yourself, okay, I know I'm feeling this way, and it's okay to feel this way. I need to feel these feelings. And I think there's so often times where kids are coping or covering up something rather than trying to deal with what's actually going on and with the feelings, the emotions that they're feeling. So I just urge students to just make sure you're checking in on yourself, and if you're a friend, make sure that you're checking in on your friends too, checking in on each other. Just saying, how are you? That's really important and really easy way to get the conversation going.
I agree. I think this was definitely a very important topic to discuss, and I'm so happy I have you guys here to discuss it with me. this isn't the last time we're coming to this topic, so I'm sure you guys can watch the next one if you guys are invited on again. I'm not sure who we're having on, but yeah, thank you guys so much for being here and talking about it with me. I think that's all. So thank you everyone at home watching, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you
job,
for having
Leah.
us.
Good job.
Thank you guys.